A Utah woman who gave online parenting advice through a once popular YouTube channel has now been arrested on suspicion of aggravated child abuse.
People started to notice they had a really harsh parenting style.
I'm only gonna say it one more time, and then you're gonna lose the privilege to eat dinner.
She forgot her lunch. We're not giving her another lunch. The teacher's calling. I hope nobody else gives her a lunch because she'll learn a lesson going hungry.
I do want to warn you, the allegations are incredibly disturbing.
I've always had a dislike of family vlogging channels. There seems to be something inherently slimy about filming kids growing up and making them famous before they're even able to drive a car. As we all know, child stars from Hollywood can encounter a myriad of problems relating to their identity, substance abuse, social isolation from peers, and many other things that come at the cost of their fame. So why would family vlogging channels on YouTube be any different? This isn't to say that every family vlogging channel is bad. Rowan Atwood is successful, and he's run a family vlogging channel for more than half a decade, and it seems like throughout that time he's managed to keep his family's heads on straight and avoid the complications that can come from stardom. On the extreme opposite end of the spectrum, we have 8 Passengers, a family vlog channel that was run by Ruby and Kevin Franke.
Whenever we start sharing the details of how we actually parent, we get a lot of upset.
Now, these guys have been under fire for a while. They were the subject of a Jay Aubrey video. They were the subject of various compilation channels who alleged they were bad parents, and even claims that they were straight up abusive. And they were also sort of being criticized by the whole tea spilling side of YouTube. I think you guys know what I'm referring to.
If you cut one more thing in my house,
we're chopping its head off.
I'm going to take the scissors, look at me, and I'm going to cut its head off.
Grandma will be so mad!
I want to tell you something, and I want you to really listen. We should have been in that crash. Put them in your pocket so you can take them down to the hamper and drop and give me 10.
1.
Put your hands straight out. They're in. They're not supposed to be out. Shape your hands forward. There you go. 1, 2, down further, bring your butt down.
Well, today, a lot of those channels are saying I told you so because Ruby Franke was arrested on aggravated child abuse charges. Not just normal child abuse.
Aggravated.
Okay, this is serious stuff.
I've been a masterful manipulator. I've manipulated using external rewards. I have wanted something, and I'm going to get it no matter.
According to the Washington County Sheriff's Department, she was arrested on August 31st at 9:33 p.m. Also arrested at the time was her business partner, Jody Hildebrandt, who co-founded a parenting advice channel with her. Now keep in mind that the original 8 Passengers channel was actually deleted off of YouTube at its peak, where it had 2.5 million subscribers, and the reason it was deleted was because a lot of people were alleging that they were abusive to their kids, that they were not taking care of them properly. There was a lot of controversy around that, and as a result, YouTube just decided to pull the plug entirely on their content.
I'm telling you, I was making millions, and I left it because my kids were being hurt. With entitlement, they were being hurt. With people's advice, and they didn't have a mother up the front saying, I don't care what the world's opinion is. This is the truth, and this is where I stand. And fortunately, I had a chance. I had them in my home long enough to do it, and I'm not going to lose them. They're seeing truth, they're accepting truth, they're loving truth. And so this is my passion, is to invite you to stand in truth and put your opinions to the side for a minute. Because your kids are the target of distortion.
Another thing to note here is that this was basically a small empire on YouTube, where Ruby would run her channel, and then her sisters, and yes, that is sisters, plural, had their own channels with their own families where they would create, family channel content. So it seems after her initial success from her own family channel, she decided to get the rest of her family members in on it due to the money that she was pulling in. And one of the people involved here was Ruby's eldest daughter, Sherry, who's been somewhat vocal about how she hated her time at the Franke household, and she no longer wants to be associated with her mom. When she heard news of what had happened, she posted a photo of some cop cars outside of her mom's house with the caption, finally, basically alluding to the fact that, this is a long time coming and she wanted her mother to be taken into custody for a while. It seems like behind the scenes there was some level of knowledge about Ruby's mistreatment of her kids, and basically, they're just celebrating now that she's finally locked up. According to reports, the reason why this even happened in the first place is because one of Ruby's kids was knocking on a neighbor's door asking for food and water. That neighbor then calls the police and the cops arrive, and they describe this kid as malnourished malnourished, as well as having wounds on his body consistent with some kind of harm, allegedly at the hand of Ruby Franke. Cops then go to Jody Hildebrandt's home, who, as I mentioned, is Ruby's business partner, and there they find another kid inside the home with what is described as a similar physical condition of malnourishment, which basically means that these kids were not being fed by their mom, and apparently this business partner is being implicated as well in these crimes. Those kids are then taken to the hospital, and Ruby as well as Jody are taken into custody. After further investigation, it was also discovered that the neighbors saw duct tape on the child's ankles and wrists, which definitely makes this a lot more horrific to think about. The boy was taken to the hospital, where he was put on a medical hold due to his deep lacerations from being tied up with rope from his malnourishment, arrest records state. Another child was later found malnourished in Hildebrandt's house and was also taken to the hospital. During the search of the home, evidence was located consistent with the markings found on the juvenile, the release said. 2 other of Franke's children were in custody of Child Protective Services, according to the affidavit. Ruby did not speak to the police when they got there. Instead, she just said, talk to my lawyer, talk to my attorney. And after a journalist reached out for comment from the husband, that was also referred to her husband's attorney. And Jody, as well as Ruby, were both denied bail, by the way. While the children were found at Hildebrandt's house, Franke had been seen on a YouTube video filmed at Hildebrandt's house and posted 2 days earlier, indicating Franke was present at the residence and had knowledge of the abuse, malnourishment, and neglect, arrest records said. Hildebrandt was also denied bail, court records said. Now, from what I can tell, the way that these two were making money, at least with the 8 Passengers channel gone, was through the Connections podcast, which is available on Spotify right now for anyone who wants to do some digging and see what you may find there. Sherry Franke ended up writing on Instagram saying, "Today has been a big day. Me and my family are just so glad justice is being served. We've been trying to tell the police and CPS for years about this, and so glad they finally decided to step up." And the allegation being made here is basically that she was not feeding her kids and that they decided to escape as a way to get some food. Funnily enough, one of the things people criticized her for back in the day was expecting her 5-year-old to pack a lunch for herself, and these clips and retrospects definitely cast a certain level of dramatic irony on what we now know. Because not feeling sympathetic that your kid didn't eat that day is bad enough, but on the other hand, this is a whole new level, okay? This is obviously a whole new level of abuse.
Got a text message from Eve's teacher, and she said that Eve did not pack a lunch today, and can I bring a lunch over to the school?
She's just going to need to be hungry. I mean, I understand teaching kids personal responsibility, but come on, she's 5 years old. Make her lunch. I'm 21 years old and I can't even make my own lunch. How are you expecting a 5-year-old to do this?
My hope is that she'll be hungry and come home and go, oh man, that was really painful being hungry all day. I will make sure to always have a lunch with me.
One moment from back in the heyday of the channel that was heavily criticized was The Talk, wherein she decided to film a puberty talk with her kid against their will and then post it. Jay Aubrey brought this up in his video from 3 years ago, and it's clear that she definitely had no respect for her children's privacy.
Can I have a conversation with you?
Not The Talk, not right here.
Actually, that's what it is.
No, it's not.
No.
Not doing this, not doing this.
Okay, so here, just come sit by me.
I mean, there's no good reason to film something like this. It's kind of insane. I can only assume that the money Ruby was making outweighed her respect for her kids' privacy at this moment, but this at the end of the day is my main issue with family vlog channels in general. Moments like this just do not need to be recorded. They're private, formative moments that not everyone needs to see. But on YouTube, there are people who will watch these moments, and as a result, greedy parents like the Frankes are willing to film all of those intimate moments to put them out on the internet. These kids can't consent to this being posted online. Even if they say in the moment they're cool with it, they're still kids. They can't consent to this kind of stuff being all over the internet or properly grasp the consequences of having your entire childhood viewable for the entire world and documented until the end of time, you know? Some things just don't need to be filmed. Having the talk with your parents doesn't need to be filmed. But that doesn't matter too much to Ruby. She just wanted to get that ad revenue, and it seems like she kind of thought she was doing the right thing for her kids as well. Another heavily criticized moment was when she filmed her kids' first time shaving, twice with her daughters and once with her son.
Julie has been asking all summer if she can shave her legs and armpits. I think every girl has a story where they're in a rush, it will cut. So there's a lot of hair in there actually.
Mom, don't show that.
There was a distinct lack of privacy where there was literally no respect for the individual rights of these kids. Even if they seem cool with being on a vlog channel now, who's to say in a few years that they won't change their mind when they realize how all of this has affected their development? It's definitely not, fun to be going to school and every kid at school has instant access to everything you're doing at all times of day. They can see you going to bed, waking up, they can see your most embarrassing private moments, they can see your mom giving you the talk, they can see you shaving for the first time. I mean, these are all very, you know, special moments to growing up, and they really don't need to be shared with the entire class, let alone the entire world, with all these random people who you don't know viewing your own personal interactions and judging your family, you know? Even if the Franks hadn't been bad parents, even if they were good parents, it can't be healthy for a kid to be able to read thousands of comments talking about his life every day. It's just not good. I mean, for viewers at home, imagine if all of your most intimate, embarrassing moments were out there on the internet for everyone to see, against your will. Doesn't sound that great to me, to be honest. A guy called Todd Grande, who's actually a psychologist, made a video a few years ago going into the content itself and talking about the stress it must put on these kids. He brings up the fact that today, even some child actors have decent protections to aid their development, prevent abuse, and prevent a lot of the shortcomings that can come from being a child star. There's a much more professional approach to it, whereas family vlog channels are completely unregulated. Am I necessarily advocating for government involvement right now? Not really. I don't really know what the solution is to this problem, but I would imagine there probably is a decent one out there somewhere, and it's definitely not filming your kids 24/7 in their most private moments and putting it on the internet for, you know, hundreds, thousands, potentially millions of people to see. On one hand, I understand that these channels are very profitable, and I definitely understand wanting money. I mean, I want money. Who doesn't want money? And I also understand, like, you know, mentally there may be a little bit of a cope here where it's like, well, there are worse ways to make money. We're not drug dealers. We're not, you know, involved in organized crime. We're not doing anything illegal. We're just filming our family. And on that note, it may seem like there's nothing wrong, but when you actually take into account the repercussions that this can have for your kids, for your family as a whole, and the way that this is perceived to everyone else, I think that the negatives undoubtedly outweigh the positives. I don't think the Franks were broke before they started filming YouTube videos. They seem moderately wealthy. And so at what point does the source of that money become more of a detriment than the benefit to your family?
Another key part of this is consent. Some might say, these children are consenting to being on the channel, but I don't see how they can consent. They're not old enough for that. Even if one could make the argument that them being recorded isn't harmful right now, I wonder what happens later on. For example, they grow up, they start looking for a job, they interview, the interviewer searches their name, they find over 1,000 videos featuring that person. In many of those videos, they will be doing something embarrassing. There will be something that the interviewer can latch on to and say, I don't really feel comfortable getting involved in whatever they were doing. So there could be damage later on, just based on the recordings. If one of these children committed a crime and they were adjudicated in family court, they could petition the court to have their records sealed, but they can't do anything to seal this video record. Just like extreme isolation is harmful, extreme exposure is harmful too.
Now, I think it's worth noting that Ruby Franke didn't think she was doing anything wrong. She thought she was just helping her kids and, you know, helping out her audience. She thought that by making money, she can enrich her kids' lives with the content, and she thought that by filming her own family, she could also set a good example for other families and how to parent. I think the issue here becomes, even if there were no issues with filming her kids on its own, from the actual parenting perspective, I mean, their parenting was constantly being called into question. From threatening the kids with, like, you're not eating dinner tonight, something that it seems like may have been followed through looking back at all the vlogs now, which is definitely abusive. You cannot starve your kids, to plenty of other actions that were criticized widely by the internet, and is ultimately the reason why the controversy got so big 3 years ago and why the 8 Passengers channel was deleted by YouTube themselves. Now, another family vlog channel that was called into question around that time was the Ace family, who was not as bad but would capitalize off of traumatic experiences of their children, such as their kid being bit by their dog.
The dog bit our baby, scary moment. Like, a lot of these videos, and it really doesn't take long to find them because there's so many on all of these family vlog channels. It's like they really like start pumping their fists like, yeah, my kids got hurt. There's gonna be big views. You can find so much of this. So it's not even like wholesome families doing wholesome shit. It's these really sick families celebrating and capitalizing off of traumatic experiences of their children.
I'm hoping that this situation will not only start a dialogue on neglect and abuse, but also start a broader conversation about family channels and the harm that they can do to children, especially when they're done as egregious as the Franke family was doing them. You know, I think there's no doubt in anyone's mind, we don't need a scientific study right now to prove that this probably has a detrimental effect on a lot of kids. I would say that I can only think of like one example of a good family vlog channel being Roman Atwood. There probably are other examples, but even at that, I feel like bottom line, just filming your kids grow up is probably a bad idea, unless it's done in an extremely limited capacity and the kid is completely isolated from the factors that can come from that fame, like the attention. Because at the end of the day, humans aren't meant to be famous in the first place. We're not meant to get that much attention. And that's part of why it becomes so addicting once you do get it, you know? That's why a lot of actors kind of go crazy. They go off the rails once they get into a position of power. And that's the same that happens with a lot of YouTubers, you know? But at least with an adult, there's someone someone who worked for a certain amount of time to get to that point, there's a sort of earning of that fame, right? There's a sort of earning of that position. For kids, you're supposed to start at ground level. You're supposed to start with like no inherent attention, no inherent fame or positive reinforcement other than from your family. And unfortunately, family vlog channels completely bypass this part of development by giving kids a ton of attention at an early age, giving them access to thousands of comments and fans. I mean, imagine being 6 years old and you're going to a fan meetup and you didn't even do anything. You're just a normal kid. You just like play with toys and your mom films it, and that got 8 million views. That's absolutely insane. And I'd also like to ask as a little bit of a question for the viewers at home. I would guess I don't have a lot of overlap with the family vlog channel audience, but if anyone in my audience does watch these family vlog channels, what is the appeal of them? You know, to me, it seems like a very mundane type of content. It's like you're just watching people grow up. Don't you have enough stress in your own personal life? Don't you have your own family to worry about? Why you need to watch these people have their family, you know? I understand with vloggers like Danny Duncan or Jake Paul while people watch them because they have crazy lives. They have crazy celebrity lives where they do demolition derby and have crazy fan meetups and do all of this insane stuff. For family vlog channels, like these are just normal families living in their house, like eating cereal. What is the appeal to this kind of content? Now, as another update, Ruby's sisters did a collaborative post on Instagram saying, "For the last 3 years, we've kept quiet on the subject of our sister Ruby Franke and her children. Behind the public scenes, we've done everything we could to try and make sure the kids were safe. We wouldn't feel right moving forward with regular content without addressing the most recent events. Once we do, we will not be commenting on it further. Ruby was arrested, which needed to happen. Jody was arrested, which needed to happen. The kids are now safe, which is the #1 priority."
Ruby said a 12-year-old male showed up with tape around his legs Thursday asking for help, said he was afraid asking for police. Deborah, he gave the name of Franke, unknown date of birth, or he did give us the date of birth, but I'm not showing any Russells and Spillman. I'll keep looking into that. The RP said he left through the porch of the neighbor's house. The male does have duct tape around each ankle. He's not telling the RP why. And said that there's sores around his wrists and ankles. He's becoming, or correction, the RP is becoming emotional regarding the child's health. I'm going to go ahead and have medical stage on this one. The RP said that he left from a neighbor's of Jody Hildebrand in Ivan's 54-year-old female. Not sure if they're related. When asking the RP's parents info, he said his mom is Ruby Franke, unknown where she lives. He's also saying that there's 2 of his sisters are back at the home as well.
Ultimately, it seems like there was some knowledge behind the scenes of how awful Ruby was, and apparently Jody as well as the other sisters and people around them were trying to work out some kind of solution, and nothing had been reached until now. But behind the scenes, I mean, according to Sherry, there were stories. According to 2 of Ruby's sisters, there were stories about what they were doing. Apparently, they knew there was some kind of neglect going on in the house. There was some kind of bad behavior, and they just didn't know exactly how to get that handled. You know, it's not easy to get someone arrested. It's not easy to get CPS to actually take kids away from, you know, a household. There's a high bar of evidence that needs to be proven. And so as a result, they probably just had a hard time up until this point getting that dealt with. And I'm very thankful to hear that at this point, it has been, you know, somewhat dealt with. It seems like Jody is going to be in jail. And it seems like Ruby is also going to be in jail for a considerable amount of time. They're both arrested. They've been denied bail, so they're not going to be able to go out and try to defend themselves in the public square. Not that I think they want to anyway right now. And they're also not going to be able to get in contact with their kids again. It doesn't make me particularly happy to report on these really, really dark situations. I mean, keep in mind, even though there's some sense of justice, just a few days ago, apparently there were kids tied up in this woman's house, not being fed, not being taken care of. That is horrible. That is like worst case scenario. What is wrong with these people? Keep in mind, for legal reasons, this is all allegations. This is all just a police report. So at the end of the day, maybe some of this is made up. But what we do know is that a kid definitely went to a neighbor's house. That kid definitely was malnourished. He had markings consistent with being tied up. There was apparently duct tape there. And we also know that those kids were Ruby Franke's kids. We know they came from her coworker's, or I guess business partner's house. And we also know that the police arrested Ruby Franke and Jody Hildebrandt, and they're now being held without bail. I assume we'll get some more information about this as the trial begins, unless they just decide to confess right away, and that's how it goes. But I assume there will be some more information about this as the trial begins. I'll be curious to see if they plead guilty or not guilty. I'll be curious to see what the evidence brought against them is. I anticipate this is going to be a really high-profile case just based on the fact that, you know, Ruby was a big public figure at one point. She was one of the biggest family vlog channels on YouTube. 2.5 million subscribers is nothing to scoff at. At one point, she was bragging about the fact she was making millions of dollars a year doing this content. And so as a result, there's definitely a big market of people, particularly haters, you know, who are very justified in hating her, undoubtedly. There's definitely a big market of haters who are waiting to see this trial go down. I mean, Jay Aubrey's video about this has 4 million views. Some of the other videos about this have 500,000 to 1 million views. There's a few compilations even that have more than 1 million views, just showing what, you know, fans believe to be neglect or abuse on behalf of Ruby. And so as a result, I think that there's going to be a lot of people talking about this case going forward. And when we see the conclusion, I'll definitely be sure to give you guys an update about what happened. Not much else to say about it, so bye. And if you liked this video, consider becoming a member. For $5 a month, you get access to exclusive podcasts, unreleased videos, and the members-only Minecraft server. Thanks so much to all of my YouTube members who fund my content.